Lemmy's vocals, and you don't say this a lot about bands, but the voice almost is part of the wall of sound musically. Here, just like something trying to climb out of that mire of fuzz. I think this can go one of two ways. With Lil Joe playing bass on it, you never know what the hell might happen. I was just kind of holding my breath for something like this. Man, is there any oxygen left in the room after that? Wait, who wore it better? Welcome back to Low End University. We're right in the thick of this month's Who Wore It Better theme, where I take an original song, a cover of the same song, put them side by side, and figure out ultimately, well, who did it better, especially when it comes down to the bass lines. Today's episode features Motörhead's track Rock and Roll, alongside a very recent cover by Lagwagon. Just last year, in fact. I haven't heard either version yet, so today I'm going to first kick things off with the OG version. Motörhead have always been one of those bands I appreciated from afar. I never went that deep into their discography, not really at all, but so many of my favorite bands growing up revered them so highly that I practically absorbed the respect by proxy. But if there's one person in music history who aesthetically embodies the spirit of rock and roll to a T in human form, it's Lemmy Kilmister. It feels especially fitting that today I'm hearing a track literally titled Rock and Roll. This song is from Motörhead's 8th studio album. It's the title track, Rock and Roll, released in 1987. And by this point, the band had fully cemented their identity. Equal parts metal, punk, and raw rock attitude delivered in their own special way. Lemmy is handling bass and lead vocal duties as always, and I assume using that signature, distorted Rickenbacker tone that blurs the lines between bass and rhythm guitar. I mean, nobody does it like Lemmy. And one quick note, before we dive in today, I'm quietly debuting a new bass. This is my new Bomber bass, hand-built by Lagwagon bassist Lil Joe Raposo and his partner Tanner Leeser. I've had it for about a month now, and I love it. I'll do a proper deep dive and demo soon, but it's making a little quiet cameo appearance in today's video, so please go follow them. They're doing incredible builds, and I've linked their Instagram page below. Very first line of the video description. Do it for me right now. Right meow. Just go do it. All right, back to the music. Let's hear Motörhead's Rock and Roll. Whew. Like I'm in a cave. That reverb. That's intense. Okay. E flat.
Well, here, babe, look at you in love with someone else. Turned out like all the others, leave me by myself. That's how it works, I guess. And you like all the rest. Guess I can handle it, and that's the way it is. I'm in love with rock and roll. It satisfies my soul. That's how it has to be. I won't get mad.
Yeah, that's the quintessential Motörhead sound, isn't it? I feel like the distortion on Lemmy's bass, again, kind of becomes the rhythm guitar. They kind of become indistinguishable. Then you add that gravelly voice. Lemmy's vocals, and you don't say this a lot about bands, but the voice almost is part of the wall of sound musically, like the tonality of it. And again, I believe they're always tuned down a half step to E flat standard. So starting out just 7-1, we're hearing E flat minor. And I think the charm about his vocal melodies is I feel like every song I've heard, it has a very similar melody in terms of it being cut from the same cloth, approach-wise with the notes. 2 or 3 notes, but it really focuses on groove, which contrasts the kind of straighter part of the music. So he's up there kind of doing this. It's groovy. It's like a sax solo, right? I talk about this concept all the time. Melodies, I think, are more catchy when they have less notes. Let's start this one over. Jump right back in. Let's see. Man, that's some verb.
Well, here, babe, look at you in
Yeah.
love with someone else. Turned out like all the others, leave me by myself. That's how it works, I guess. And you like all the rest. Guess I can handle it, and that's the way it is. I'm in love with rock and roll. It satisfies my soul. That's how it has to be. I won't get mad. I got rock and
It almost sounds like Lemmy is, I use the term harmonize very loosely, but I think it comes in with another vocal track that just thickens up. And I would just call it doubling, really, but it almost sounds like he's choosing a different pitch. Again, harmonizing, it's hard to say, but if you can hear that entrance here, it just makes for a really big sound. I think Motörhead do this thing best. They just know how to have singularity that's articulate, but it's big because of his voice. It's like another fuzz pedal. Again, nobody really does it like them. I'm talking about this thing right here. You kind of hear how you hear that second vocal layer coming in. It's hard to really say with certainty, but compare it to this part. See, it's a little more by itself there. And you hear, I guess, the doubling coming here. It's just huge. Not yet. Not yet. Right here. That widening is huge. And I think for most of the Motörhead I've heard, maybe I'm not paying attention this closely, but I feel like he's always just relied on that single vocal track. So that's a cool texture. Pretty new to me, based on what I've heard. Okay, it's just going 7, 6, 7, 1. I'm trying to figure out if he's really going to the open low E flat, because I'm hearing standard. So, this would be like playing an E tuned down. So I'm just kind of doing, like fourth position, A flat. So I don't have that low E flat to go down to, which I think he's keeping it more mid-range. And he's always had that tendency. I don't want to say he never uses the E string or the notes down here, but he kind of stays on the A and D typically. And I think it just might respond better with the fuzzy bass tone, because he does some chords, he does some double stops, he does fifths and octaves, and just, the lower you go on bass, you're just going to kind of get this farting out, diminishing returns effect. So that's always my theory on why some bass players kind of keep it in the middle. They can go higher and they can go lower, but this is kind of home bass. So nothing too crazy about this song. It's a very classic rock and roll progression. 1, down to the 4, 6, 7, 1. Right there. Okay. Ooh. Even that lead tone is reminiscent of everything. It just fits right in. Everything's just smeared together. To even talk about his tone, I might turn this drive channel on a little bit, but he's never had a really sharp tone. It's kind of like soft and fuzzy. Maybe a little bit of that. You get more of a smearing on the attack, so it's not so like clean and hi-fi. You don't want this kind of like, you want this more subdued thing, kind of like, where you can't really tell if he's subdividing every chord. Or doing this. So adding in a little drive, and Rickenbackers, again, we've been over this, they kind of accentuate the mid-range, the unpleasant parts of the tone, but it works in the mix. That's key, right? Maybe, I don't want to say scoop, but maybe a little bit of a bass boost. I don't know. Something maybe kind of like that. Maybe not that much bass. Just kind of screwing around here. Yeah. Something a little less chirpy on the high end is what I would go for, trying to get a Motörhead tone in on the fly. Okay. There's the low E. I think that's the first time he went down low. Could be wrong, but I feel like in past songs he's done the same approach. Maybe. That gets your attention if everything else didn't. Kind of this swirling around, panning thing. And again, as I always talk about in these Who Wore It Better episodes, that's a tongue twister to say it fast. I'm always hearing this original, whatever song I hear first, and trying to imagine how the artist will do it based on what I know about them. I've gotten very familiar with Lagwagon. They're like one of my favorite punk bands now. I'm in deep with everything. I've reviewed their albums on Patreon and such, and they tend to have a very technical, sharp style. So I think this can go one of two ways, which we'll get to after the song's over, but I'm hearing a lot of opportunity for them to fill in the space. Guitars, whether it's the riffs, certainly the solo here, and with Lil Joe playing bass on it, you never know what the hell might happen. That's my expectation, based on just some of the context clues, because some of our patrons mentioned this being a thing. We'll see what happens. Okay. This swirly panning thing here. We're kind of swirling around your head. You get this dizzy feeling with the panning, and then it just centers you back in the middle. It kind of brings everything back and gets your attention. That's a cool but very understated production thing.
Imagine growing old with anyone, marching to a different drum, I hear a different song. I swear I love them all. I don't care if they're small, I don't care if they're tall, I love them anyway. I got rock and roll, it satisfies my soul, that's how it has to be, I won't get mad. I got rock and roll, to save me from the cold, and if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and roll, satisfies my soul, if that's how it is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and
I feel like the bass got a little lower than normal here.
I got rock and roll, to save me from the cold, and if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and roll, satisfies my soul, if that's how it is, it ain't so bad.
You hear that? Don't recall Lemmy ever playing anything like a low C sharp, but if we're listening to the same song here, you and I, you hear that low C sharp happen. It's like down there on the fifth string. I don't think there's a fifth string. Are you guys hearing that? It could be anything. It could be something they just did in the studio. I don't know, but it just adds some bottom end weight that you haven't heard earlier in the song. Right here.
To save me from the cold, and if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and roll, satisfies my soul, if that's how it is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and
So you get something dropped down there. No idea.
roll, save me from the cold, and if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and roll, it satisfies my soul, that's how it has to be, I won't get mad. I got rock and roll, to save me from the cold, and
Rock and
if
roll.
that's all there is, it ain't so bad. Rock and roll, rock and roll.
I like how the solo sort of started creeping in a little early. You hear just like something trying to climb out of that mire of fuzz, which again, his vocals sound extra gravelly on this track. I'm thinking 8th studio album. I've heard Ace of Spades, the top 5 hits you would find on a Spotify. Overkill. I don't know what albums those necessarily hail from, but typically singers or vocalists like him, just over time, they will just get more gravelly and such. I know enough about, I feel like I know more about Lemmy as a person autobiographically than really his music. So I don't know where this takes place, but again, the voice is extra gravelly here. And the fact that sounds like he's doubling it is just huge. Just a swamp of fuzz.
I got rock and roll, save me
Listen to the guitar solo.
if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and roll, it satisfies my soul, that's how it has to be, I won't get mad. I got rock and roll,
It's like climbing out of it.
from the cold, and if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. Rock and roll.
You hear it kind of bubbling underneath, like just some octaves. I don't know exactly what, but it just kind of climbs out of it and makes a reappearance to go under the vocals. I think they're at the same time here. Yeah. Classic thing in rock and roll, right? Repeating a double chorus at the end, guitar solo, just wailing to see it out. That's just the classic play, right?
Rock and roll, rock and
I still hear that really low note. And that's a cool, I would say, classic thing again, where we've repeated the hook, rock and roll, the chorus, whatever you want to call it, so many times that it now becomes the ostinato, and it's just repeating endlessly in the background. You can actually hear that shift in volume in the mixing stage. The guitar solo has been kind of like behind the rock and roll, and now they've traded places. Not worth going back to really show that, but if you go back and listen, you can kind of hear the rock and roll fading into the sunset, proverbial sunset. Now the guitar solo is taking center stage to take us out. It starts taking over here. Now it's louder. Rock and roll. Nobody has more permission to sing about that than Lemmy. Okay, well, that sounded like grade A quintessential Motörhead to me, right? And as always with their music, so much of its identity lives in the attitude. The relentlessly rolling pulse, the distorted bass becoming another rhythm guitar, that unmistakable Lemmy snarl sitting on top, which sounded extra snarly in this track. But it reminds me sort of comedians who may not say the funniest things, but it's their delivery that drives it home. I mean, that's a perfect example of what Motörhead are musically to me. The songs are simple, actually, but it's the delivery that has that attitude baked in that really makes them so unique. But it's time to hear Lagwagon's take on their song. And actually, this is going to be the most modern Lagwagon song I've heard to date. By far. I haven't heard anything from their most recent album, 2019's Railer. So this should be a pretty updated snapshot of what the band are about today. However, this cover appears on an album titled Killed by Death, a punk tribute to Motörhead, a tribute album from just last year featuring a range of punk bands reinterpreting Motörhead classics. Given how deeply Motörhead influenced pretty much anyone playing rock and roll, punk, everything, pun intended, this seems like a pretty natural extension for so many of the bands. But if you know enough about Joe Raposo's playing, and you'd be surprised how little of it I've actually heard so far, it's frankly just nuts. While his style blends equal parts speed and clarity, it's always done in this really agile way with melodic awareness being top priority. I mean, this was immediately evident when I first heard Betrayed by RKL very early on the channel. So I'm curious whether they decided to lean into Motörhead's vibe, the whole delivery attitude thing I was just talking about, or filter it through Lagwagon's tighter, more articulate flavor of punk rock. I've also really come to love Joey Cape as a vocalist, so knowing he's tackling one of the most gravelly sounding vocalists ever laid to tape, I'm a little curious about that side of things as well. Off we go. Maybe feels a bit faster. Same key.
Well, yeah, babe, look at you in love with someone else. Turned out like all the others.
Whoa.
Leave me by myself. That's how it works, I guess. And you're like,
For like a split second, the vocals came in and I just thought, he kind of nailed the Lemmy thing. Like, it just kind of caught me off guard. I don't know what I was expecting. You know, what I've heard from Joey Cape, most of the time it's got this soft delivery. I go really in depth about that in the full album reviews. I've just really come to love his uniqueness as a vocalist. And it just has this soaring quality about it. So I was very curious, how's he going to tackle Lemmy? But he's doing a really good job. I think it's more in the way he's saying the words. He's just kind of nailing that thing about it. I mean, I don't know if anybody smoked as many cigarettes as Lemmy to really get that tone, but you know, you can really get there halfway with the right vocalist really knowing what they're doing. So hats off to that. It kind of took me off guard. Okay.
well, yeah, babe, look at you in love with someone else.
Someone else. That kind of just kind of leaning into it with the pitch, adding a little gravelly thing behind it. I mean, it gets you almost there. Nice one.
Turned out like all the others. Leave me by myself. That's how it works,
Ripping
I
bass
guess.
fill.
And you're like all the rest.
Okay, what's going on there? Obviously, I just know, I mean, I don't have to know enough context to know that this is just going to be probably a bass ripping thing. Like, none of this was planned or anything. Like, I got this bass a month ago. I knew I was going to do this song, this theme. Our patrons have talked about it. It's been requested on YouTube. So it kind of worked out, and I'm just so excited to hear what he does. Starting off on a high note, ripping down this kind of thing here. Obviously a pick player as well. Okay, everything's the same so far. I feel like the song's a touch faster. And I don't know if I can tell by the drum beat, maybe just the way I feel like Joey Cape is articulating syllabically a bit harder, so you can kind of feel the meter where Lemmy kind of just, I don't want to say slurs it all together, but it's kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. How do you describe Lemmy's voice? It's like everything kind of through a cheese grater. So finding like rhythmically sometimes can be hard when he slurs certain words together. Not in a bad way. It's just the way he's kind of puttering it out. So a different vocalist, you kind of hear that meter a bit more. So it feels faster from just listening to the vocals. And yeah, same thing so far. I have a feeling Joe is going to utilize that open E flat a bit more. I don't have the down tuner E flat. I'm on a different patch I made for this bass, and so this is actually passive. I'm using passive EMG pickups. They do exist. This is the Geezer Butler signature set. I've never tried them before, but I wanted to go for something completely different. This bass sounds like nothing I own, so I got to make a note to put the lower detune thing on this patch because I'll be using this bass a lot. Okay, let's roll into that.
I never been a one, you have no steady girl. I love the way I live, running around the world. I like to fool around, I like to tear it down. And when I leave, you love to miss me while I'm gone.
Are your bass chords there?
I like to fool around, I like to tear it down. And when I leave, you love to miss.
You guys hear that? It's subtle. It may not even be there. I just think I hear it. Maybe I just want to hear it. Definitely an octave. And if you're getting the root and you're getting the octave, fuck it. You might as well just throw in the fifth. So we're going to say it's there. Okay. Fuck. Is this taking place of the guitar solo? I was just kind of holding my breath for something like this. He's actually got quite a fuzzy tone. You know, I could dial up the grit a little bit. You know, just get something a bit more... I don't even know if I can get that in the ballpark. It's really got a lot going on there. Let's see. I think if I dig in with fingers, you might get it a little more. Okay, let's roll into that. Very curious, arrangement-wise, if this is just taking place of the guitar solo.
That's all there is. It ain't so bad, rock and roll. Play it to me.
Gonna start with this blues scale, top half of the E-flat blues scale. Which I think I didn't pay attention too much to the phrasing of that guitar solo. Maybe a nod to that. Woo! Man. It keeps going. Is there any oxygen left in the room after that? I mean, that's what a cool liberty. I mean, I'm not surprised hearing this, but I didn't expect it to go so long, maybe so early in the song. You know, usually you can get away with that kind of stuff as the song fades out. As I always talk about, bass players just kind of let loose at the end of the song. This is like the focal point of the song. This is early on. This is up front. Of course, I got to hear it again. Tasteful stuff. I think it, the bass tone, I think, is nodding to the guitar tone. Now, I don't want to overcomplicate why Joe might have chosen a more fuzzy tone, but that's just kind of reminded me, at least starting out, like that guitar solo. He said, I'm gonna throw a nod his way, and then I'm gonna go ape shit. And that's exactly what he did. It just kept getting longer and longer. I think like 2 full repeats through the vamp. Let's see. And I don't want to forget the stuff happening here. You can kind of hear it bubbling down there. Just some nice little linking together of the chords. Right there. All right. Let's it breathe for a minute. Okay, the thing here, I truly don't think I've heard enough of Lil Joe's playing yet. I mean, a handful of songs, but it's taken all the willpower in the world, but I'm just going with what the community decides on Patreon in here. So yeah, I have not as big of a sample set as you would think. What I do know about his playing is that he utilizes something you don't hear a lot of bass players do. And that's just really leaning into the open strings to change positions. Seems like an elementary idea, but you'd be surprised how many bass players just kind of avoid open strings, especially higher up. I think some of that approach comes from guitar, where you're typically used to playing open strings more as a guitar player. And I actually don't know Joe's background in terms of if he started on bass or guitar, but I find bass players who used to be guitarists tend to do this because open strings are a bit more in your vocabulary. Bass, you're trying to keep everything uniform. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of these licks he's doing, and I'm just going to have to play an E standard because I don't have the open F sharp it would be tuned down, but it's a lot of this sort of like, just climbing that really high thing. Like, you would never be able to do that going. So using those open strings strategically to kind of go from where he's starting on the solo, it allows you to just do those position changes and you can't really tell where the jumps are happening. So he's able to span these like 2-octave jumps sometimes in there, and you can hear a lot of that picking along the string because he's got a heavy hand. I think he's doing a really good job of capturing the essence tonally of the original song. I'm not going to say the guitar solo as much, but just, Lemmy's tone. It's got this smearing over quality where you lose a little bit of the details in some of the notes, but that's like that rock and roll sludgy thing, right? I've known Joe to have a more hi-fi tone. Even if I'm thinking back to like RKL's Blocked Out, it cuts through like a knife. It's got that punchy hi-fi thing. And if I fast forward 2 decades to 2014's Hang, which the only track I've heard is Be Ready to Take a Shot, Obsolete Absolute, I got it right. That's a really hi-fi crisp thing. And I've seen some live clips. I follow him on Instagram. So I don't know if this is something he leans into often, but I like that it just feels like the original, just injected with adrenaline or something. One more time. I don't know if it'll come back. Maybe that was the whole thing. Let's just jump right into it.
That's how it has to be. I won't get back. I got rock and roll to save me from the cold. And if that's all there is, it ain't so bad, rock and roll.
Like how it breathes here.
Play it to me.
my man got his money's worth out of the bass. I feel like every fret was used here. I mean, that's just great. It's not kind of losing you just being up here going. It keeps it interesting. You know, it goes up here. It's just like every fret is kind of being utilized. It has that approach about it. So if you start getting lost on the higher frets, then he brings it down low and it's like a bass line again for a minute. So I just like his approach. No point in diving into all these little licks, but if you really listen closely, I feel like he traverses really quickly from a lower position down to a higher one by use of just the open strings, you know, versus fretting all that. I can traverse really quickly using those open strings. That sounds a lot more choppy. So how much he's really using that, I don't know. Only kind of suggesting this technique because he gets to the top end of the bass and the bottom end really quickly, but really smoothly. And I don't know, there's only a couple ways to do that.
Pretty good. Number one.
Okay, we're riding this out. That was badass. I'm not surprised, but it was still badass. I mean, I'm a sucker for harmonies. As I was talking about Lemmy harmonizing with himself, again, that might be a stretch. Same effect, different delivery. You actually hear the harmony here. It's cool. It's a cool modernization, I suppose, of the vocal track.
I got rock and roll. It satisfies my soul. That's how it has to be. I won't get mad. I got rock and roll to save me from the cold. And if that's all there is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and roll to satisfies my soul. If that's all there is, it ain't so bad. I got rock and roll to save me
Cool.
from the cold. If that's all there is.
Okay, now the guitar player gets to have a turn. That's fun. Sexy bass fills happening. Kind of what he did in the intro. Just a little stab of some bass energy. Ooh. Okay. Did it sound like his bass went to the left side a bit there? And I was kind of hearing the bass start creeping back up again in nutsness. And I thought, man, that's going to be a lot up the middle with the vocals. So I don't know if there's some panning happening here to really make it all breathe, but it works. Listen right here. I feel like the bass just kind of went over here a second to get out of the way, like in terms of just a panning production thing. Hear that? It's on the left. Ooh. Okay, y'all. Bass is always traditionally up the middle, mono. You don't pan bass. It lopsides the mix too much. I'm sure people do it for like a certain artistic effect, but He's jumping up and doing a solo thing here, and the guitar's going hard pan right. So it's that way, guitar, bass is going to be over there if you're looking at me. But he's still jumping down and playing a bass line, but not centered. So it does have this lopsided thing happening when you hear the bass line not up the middle with the drums. He's kind of going down to getting the... So it's a cool off the rails type of thing. I figure that's one of those things that could have happened spontaneously in like the late stage mixing or process or something. They're like, fuck yeah, that sounds so cool. You just never know. I know how many like spontaneous things happen in the studio just off the cuff that are like make or break the song. Not saying this is making or breaking the song, but it's a cool just thing, a cool nod, and it really kind of reminisces of hard panned lead guitars left and right that are doing different things, but it's bass. We're almost done. There's so much more stuff's happening here. This video would be forever to zoom in on all of it, but it's very much like a page out of the book you took taking the solo. Maybe a little more call and answer with some of the guitar stuff. Let me take all that in again. Okay, I think they're playing really consciously here. You hear the guitar start stopping maybe a bit of that shred, and it starts kind of going to the bends. It slows down a little bit, and that's when Joe starts picking up. It's like a baton handoff. I mean, this would translate perfectly live, right? Listen right here. The guitar solo starts bending. Longer notes as the bass starts making faster, more subdivided notes. So it's like a handoff. This panning thing is interesting. That lot, like the mix feels like heavy on that side. It feels like it's just going to fall apart. I think that's kind of the rock and roll. It's kind of like a figurative thing there. Again, he's still down there doing some like gurgling stuff. You hear that bubbling down there. Man, what a cool just take on the song. He's really digging in. I'll play along too. Man. So I think out of all the Who Wore It Better episodes we've done this month so far, I believe this is the first entry where a band has really come in. They recreated the original, but they took everything to level 10, to level 11, took everything to 11, just stomped all over it in a tasteful, fun way that really reimagined it as something more than it was. You know, we've had covers that really sped the tempo up, or maybe got heavier or modernized things. But this was like the full, like, let's go full bore. And as soon as I started hearing the Motörhead song, the simplistic structure, I just hear the open space that I knew they would probably take. Yeah, the obvious. Joe Raposo just went crazy over it. Let's get this out of the way. Who Wore It Better? Easy. Lagwagon. I'm not being sycophantic with all this. I mean, that's such a cool rendition of it. And as someone who isn't super into Motörhead and is really into Lagwagon by this point, Motörhead's just a band I've always loved the concept of. They embody rock and roll, the lifestyle. They lived it. They were early pioneers of it. They influenced damn near everyone. Their band photos look cool. I still want to get a picture of Lemmy in here just because of who he is, what he plays. He subverted the roles of bass. He broke all the rules and such early on. So I just love the concept of what they did for rock history. But this is a great version. I'm such a huge fan of Joe's playing. I figured there would be some crazy stuff, but not quite like that. That was a good chunk of the song where he just went to town. Come find us on Patreon. It's the best way to support the channel. Again, I reviewed 2 Lagwagon albums in full. Let's Talk About Feelings and Trashed, which are 2 very different albums and quickly taught me how wide of an approach they have to punk rock. I just really love this band. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss future episodes coming up any day now of the Who Wore It Better series. I'm having so much fun with this. Some really fun entries to close out the theme this month with. Hope to see you there. Love you all, and we'll see you in the next one.